All right, welcome to the next module, Module 3 on the basics of residential green remodeling and new construction. This course is brought to you by the Green Home Institute, and a huge thanks to our partners, Anderson Window, Panasonic, as well as our sponsors, members, and volunteers who allow us to do this. Through these modules, we'll be covering topics like materials, energy, health, water, and place, and how they holistically work together to help you make better buildings. In our last session, we covered energy, which we highly recommend you cover the energy efficiency section prior to looking into this next one. Through this session, we started with the easiest, lowest hanging fruits that you can work with your clients, working our way all the way up to things that have more of a higher upfront cost, but longer term payback. So in Module 3, we're going to be looking at health, and health in other programs. Typically, you might see some of the words like indoor air quality, IAQ, indoor environmental quality, IEQ, addressing issues such as comfort, sound, and accessibility in the home. The first thing we recommend is reducing exposure before you even think about ventilation. So once you've taken your strategies from Module 2 and made a super tight home, now you have to help your clients deal with indoor toxins from all the many products that they bring into the house. Some of the terms that we see in this are called volatile organic compounds, or VOCs is a term that you definitely want to know. Those are the kinds of things we're essentially trying to remove and discuss throughout this session. So where to look for some of this stuff? Cabinetry furniture, you're looking at formaldehyde in that, and mostly wood. VOCs, mites, and floors and wall coverings. Finishes, multiple VOCs, and older homes can have lead and asbestos. Some issues with different appliances that we're going to cover. Mechanical systems having mold, mildew, and then of course also lack of ventilation. We'll get into radon too, and then in the materials section after this one, we'll take a look at strategies to avoiding mold and mildew and moisture buildup in homes. And then also, working with your clients to talk to them about how to maintain a healthy home, such as their cleaning supplies, even looking at what types of air fresheners they add to their home that can actually drag down the health of the home after all the work you've done building and remodeling to a healthier standard. So one of the first things that you can look at, especially on an existing home, is doing an indoor air quality test. This is growing in popularity, similar to doing an energy audit. It gives you the information you need to figure out what's going on in the house and help your client make reductions. Screening for VOCs, total VOCs, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, other particulates, allergens, chemicals, pollen, mold, you name it. You can really help figure out what's going on in the house and then put a plan together on how to get rid of it. Not only that, but in new construction, this is becoming more popular in something that once everything is said and done, going in and testing this and meeting this threshold. Some programs even require certain thresholds. There haven't been any specific recommendations for particulates. A lot of different programs are trying to come up with their own and set those thresholds. And so this is something that's growing and something that's worth understanding a little bit better. I know there's some industry recognitions and credentials out there that you can look at too. If you're in commercial world, they look for industrial hygienists that do this kind of work. So continuing to find ways to reduce the VOCs and other toxins coming off materials. First, you've got the Green Label Plus, so we recommend all carpeting follow this indoor air quality measure. And then you've got Green Guard, which is a certification for many different green materials, insulations, other components of the home. You can get a Green Guard label on that and review them for air quality certification. Two in the middle there, or three of them really, all three from California. The CAA.gov section 01350 is a Important one for, again, insulations. These are the ones that are certifying VOC paints to be no or low VOC. So those are important to look for when you're doing paints or adhesives or sealants. Carb compliance is for wood and cabinetry. Basically when you install cabinets with exposed edges on them, there's a chance that that's adding formaldehyde to the house. So there's, one strategy is to seal that with ideally a California.gov certified sealant, or you can get it as carb compliant and, make sure that it doesn't have formaldehyde in it. So that's another thing to check out. And then underneath that is the South Coast Air Quality Management District. That's another certification for materials, making sure that they meet low VOC content. On the left there, the certified asthma and allergy friendly, that's a growing certification for materials out there. We're going to be doing a session on that one as well to get some more information out there about that. But if you're working with clients who have asthma or allergy concerns, and there are a growing number, you can check out what they have to offer as well. So, one of the strategies is flooring, and from a health standpoint, this flooring, wood flooring, and avoiding carpet, also gets into the materials section, which we'll cover in the next section. But from a health standpoint, we have concerns of off-gassing from carpet, glues from carpet, and then carpet trapping mold and pollen, and also carpet getting moisture in it. So one of the things we recommend is definitely keeping carpet off of ground-connected floors where water can come up to the floor and put mold or moisture into the carpet, as well as pet stains, all those nasty things that carpet can trap. So some of the green building advice is to avoid carpeting if you can, especially on the ground floor, and use a more hard surface, a wood surface, especially in bathrooms and kitchens, again, areas with higher moisture content. You definitely want to avoid carpeting and go in and instead look for harder surfaces that can avoid moisture buildup. One real simple thing that you can help your clients do that they may not even have thought about is make a friendly space that they can take their shoes off and even have track mats on the way into the house. For multifamily housing, usually the track mats are on the outside of the building, but the shoe storage is inside of the unit. And so just creating a friendly, inviting space that has enough shoe storage, has a place to sit down, a real easy thing to do, because what ends up happening is the clients are dragging in toxins, car runoff, who knows what from the ground outside into the house. And that's especially a problem for people who have children coming into their house, babies crawling around on the floor eating everything. And so this is a good way to help minimize some of those pollutants indoors. Other things that are becoming more popular, as we talked about in our last module, the idea of foam being a really great product for air sealing and resisting heat in an easy way, especially in retrofits. But there are some concerns about foam from both an indoor air quality standpoint as well as a global warming potential standpoint, and the fact that it's made out of oil. And so we have a session that we've done, and there's a lot of other great work out there on this idea of doing foam-free design for new construction or retrofits, but then also doing it in a way that's still very energy efficient and very tight. So you can check those resources out on our website as well. Okay, so make it tight, ventilate it. What? Pause it for a second and think to yourself what that answer might be. Right. So what we want to do is make it tight, ventilate it right, build it tight, ventilate it right is a strategy. So again, you followed the concepts in module 2 there. You've built an energy efficiency, made a super tight home, unless you're building, again, in a very mild climate, using a lot of passive ventilation, which is great, but we're not going to get into that here. But it's a great strategy if you can do wind towers and other things. But if not, we've got to make sure that there is, well, even that is proper ventilation. We've got to have proper ventilation. Again, you've worked with your client to reduce the potential exposure to indoor toxins, but there's always going to be some, and so it's important to do proper ventilation. And so some of the terms you might see in your codes, exhaust only, psi-only balanced energy or heat recovery ventilators, HRVs, VRVs. And then you might see a lot of reference to the ASHRAE 62.2 standard, and there's a different versions of that, 2007, 2010, 2013. That's basically a standard saying how much air makeup needs to be coming into a unit using one of these 4 strategies above it. And so following that strategy can be important depending on the type of unit that you have. And then the Building Science Corporation actually has come out with their own ventilation standards because they believe that ASHRAE may actually over-ventilate units. So you can, if you want to check that out, you can go to Building Science Corporation's website and check out their ventilation standards as well, if you're concerned about over-ventilation with your clients. So another thing, real simple thing, MERV-rated filters. If you're switching out your client's heating and cooling system, make sure to get higher MERV-rated filters. We recommend starting at 8, and then anything beyond that can actually reduce the efficiency of your heating and cooling system a little bit, but it can increase the filtration of those units. And so what these are filtering are bacteria, mold, pollen, allergens, VOCs, depending on how high level. You start to get above 13 and you're looking at hospital grade filtration, and so again, if that's important to your client, you can put those systems in there. Just make sure that the HVAC system is designed to handle that. And you can get the smaller filters now, work with your client and help them make sure that they're ordering the correct filters. They can even have an organization send them filters constantly when it needs to be changed so that they're always getting the correct one, and not just going to the store and buying something underneath MERV 8. Local exhaust is very important, and making sure it's done right is very important, both on new and existing homes. If you're building a new home, this is an easy one. If it's an existing one, you have to, especially if you're doing existing multifamily units, it might become a little bit more complex on how to properly ventilate. But the way to properly ventilate both the kitchen hood range and the bath fan to avoid humidity, and then of course in the kitchen there's other toxins coming off of especially gas stoves where you have open flames, is making sure that they're vented not into the attic but actually out of the attic, and that the vents in insulated attics are, the ducts are properly sealed. And so if you're venting them into the attic, you've got some problems because then you're dumping moisture into the attic and then potentially causing some issues. The other thing to note with these, especially on the bath fans, is to get them tested by a rater and HVAC contractor to make sure that they're actually properly exhausting at the rate you've specified them to do that, because many times they're not. So it's important to look at that. Radon, the #2 cause of lung cancer. So here's a picture of Michigan here, but you can find this on the EPA's website. You can see those zones in red have really high radon risk. The counties in orange have #2 radon risk, and then the ones in yellow typically have the least radon risk. And so this is county by county, state by state. You can review that. Some counties that have red in them actually have mandatory radon mitigation systems you have to put in already if you're pulling permits, but not all do. So we recommend working with your client before they start their job, especially if they're doing basement work and foundation work, because this is a great time to address this, to go to their local health county or home inspection service or county health department and grab some radon test kits and check to see if there's an issue, and then somewhere between $500 and $2,000 is something might be a good bonus add-on that you can spend with your client or help them get the service to install that radon mitigation system or retrofit it into the building. If you're building new, even if you're in the least rated zone, we highly recommend that you just put the system in. There are devices coming out that can actually monitor radon. Whether how well they work, we're not sure, but you can put the fan in and you can make it a passive radon system with an active fan in there. And if the monitors, go off at some point or they keep retesting and find an issue, it can always be activated later. And so we've seen it we've audited several homes in zones that are even a 1 on here where there's not supposed to be any issues, and we've seen some of the homes actually have massive issues with radon. And so it can vary lot by lot, and it can change with the shifting of the soils and with earthquakes. And so this is an important topic to address, especially if people have kids, and especially if they have kids in the basement. It can be very concerning. So that's me with my energy recovery ventilator. These are devices that can help with balanced systems in a home. It's not the only system you can do to do a balanced system. There's other systems out there that can use vast exhaust fans and ways that open the furnace damper to do a balanced system, so you've got as much air coming in as you have coming out. But what a system like this does is it acts like lungs for the house. And so what ends up happening, just like you breathe through one spot in your house, hopefully you help your client to make their home so tight that the home can only breathe in one spot, and that's what this spot would be. This energy recovery ventilator will be constantly pulling in air, constantly exhausting air in 2 different areas, so not necessarily like a mouth of breathing. And what these do is they retain the temperature of the indoor temperature. So in this one, you've got a wheel that does it. In other ones, you've got some sort of substrate that transfers energy so that you're capturing 75% to, depending on the unit, 99% of the wasted heat in the winter or the wasted cooling in the summer, and bringing it back in the house and only exhausting the stale air. And so these are important for balanced systems, something to check out with tighter homes. These systems also can be integrated right into the existing furnace, or they can be standalone. They also have point source units for multifamily housing that can be put right into the wall to service the entire house or entire unit of smaller homes and don't have to be ducted. The other thing that's cool about these is they have some more advanced ones that can monitor for moisture, that can monitor for they can monitor for carbon monoxide, for formaldehyde. So they can really look and assess the house for pollutants and then ramp up a little bit higher to remove the pollutants. So again, these are HRVs and ERVs, very important moving forward. The other thing that these systems can do is eliminate more holes. So if you remember, you want to exhaust your hood range, you want to work with your client to make sure their hood range is exhausted and that their bath fan is exhausted. And so it can be really important that those are holes in the house. Not only that, are they wasting or leaking, potentially leaking energy, but they're also exhausting the tempered air, so heating and cooling. And so again, if you use the HRV or ERV unit, you can use it to make up the bath fan exhaust that's going outside and run it right through the HRV or ERV. And if you get enough makeup air in the kitchen and you can follow the ASHRAE standards to do that, you can actually eliminate that range hood or put the ERV exhaust right there as well. And in that sense, capture that wasted air. For those of you doing multifamily housing and single-family attached row housing, the whole concept here is to eliminate air moving in between units. You never know what someone in the next unit over is smoking or cooking or who knows what. And so this can add value to the building and to the unit if you've got super tight units. And so this is pretty much made for health and comfort. It doesn't really do much to save energy, but what it is it's air sealing around each of the units to prevent any unit from communicating with the other units. And so that can be very important and something that can be promoted to help increase the value of multifamily units, where we have heard from many people who live in apartments and complain about the smells coming in from their neighbors. Okay, so the question is, can walls and surfaces actually help clean the air? And the answer is yes. We are starting to see more and more products that can actually help take mold, mildew. There's a drywall substance that can take formaldehyde out of the air. There's negative VOC paints that can actually take VOCs out of the air and absorb them into the paint. And then there are building skins for larger buildings, multifamily or commercial buildings, that can actually pull pollution out of the air as well. So something that's very interesting, and that can almost have a, what I would argue, a restorative effect on the indoor-outdoor air quality by scrubbing and cleaning the air with our building materials. So if you want to take a deeper dive into many of these different items we talked about for indoor air quality, we have a session on understanding and improving indoor air quality, thanks to Certainteed, and then they talk a little bit about their formaldehyde-eating drywall substances, and so you can check that out to advance your knowledge in the health category. All right, so water and air purification are becoming very important, and we're going to cover water here for a little bit in this section on a health standpoint, not talking about conservation, but talking primarily about healthy water. So if anything, you know, what might be going on in cities, if you've heard about what's going on in Flint with lead-tainted water, just even setting that aside, you've got cities that put fluorine or fluoride and chlorine in the water, which has its benefits, but can also have some of its drawbacks on human health. And so, at the very least, you know, in urban settings, it's important to filter water to help your clients be healthier. In rural settings, it can be important, you know, both from hard water standpoint as well as farm chemical runoff or industrial runoff. They may be in the groundwater that isn't getting tested. And, you know, you can do whole house filtration units, which can also improve the longevity of your systems, of your clients' water systems. Chlorine can actually, from the city water, can actually wear down on the life of systems, and so can other chemicals. So not only does this help their health, but it can improve the durability and reduce the maintenance of systems and piping. On the air purification side, this is a little bit different than the HRV and ERV we talked about. You know, those are bringing in fresh air and exhausting stale air. And some of the concerns with those have been, you know, could you be bringing in outdoor polluted air? And there's ways to filter that too, but this is another thing that can be done in conjunction with an ERV or as opposed to ERVs. And so there's many different air purification systems out there. You see smaller units being sold in the stores, but you know, you can help the client get whole house units if they're interested in that. And so this can help, again, basically eliminate the mold and toxins and allergens in the air using many different types of technologies, HEPA filtration, utilizing UV filtration. And there's been some pushback in some of the different programs you look out there of UV filters because they cause the low-level ozone. But there's also been some arguments that a small amount of ozone doesn't have any negative impact and can, in fact, severely reduce the other toxins in the air. And so make sure to check out that. We have a whole session on our website, too, as well as our partners' websites on strategies to work with your clients on water and air purification. So, you know, this all kind of leads to this idea that there are certain individuals out there with either diagnosed or undiagnosed and hardly ever diagnosed, called multiple chemical sensitivity, or MCS. We've met a few of them, talked to a few of them, and, you know, with all of the health issues growing in our country and around the world, more and more people seem to be reporting these issues where they have a whole host of problems, basically as they're reacting to normal indoor air quality building materials that otherwise may just cause others to have mild allergies or not impact them at all. There are people who just cannot live in certain places at certain times, and so, you know, there are strategies that can be done to avoid this through many of the things we just talked about. And there's actually, to be honest, it's such a new field that everybody who gets diagnosed has different sensitivity issues. So this is a very moving and growing concern and growing target of how do we address this. so we're not going to say that there's any one way to do it, but we do have a whole session on some ideas on how to identify and address MSC with your clients, what to do, what not to do. And the other thing that you can do is simply just use this as a precautionary approach to reduce exposure and prevent somebody from getting MCS later on in their life. Okay, so moving into mental health, believe it or not, but you can actually work with your clients to design spaces that, rather than making their mental health worse, can actually improve mental health, can actually have results on reducing anxiety, stress, depression, other mental health issues. And so a lot of this has to do with taking a biophilia or biophilic approach to design. And basically that's just a term coined by E.O. Wilson that means people's affinity to nature. And so being able to see natural shapes or patterns, essentially having a sense of mystery. I know there's a large corporation designing a building that's kind of round, so you can't really ever see around the corner. And believe it or not, that has a sense of mystery, which can actually have a good health impact on people. Natural lighting, very easy one to understand. Having plants and nature being incorporated into the building, not only can certain plants improve indoor air quality for your clients, there's a whole list of them that NASA put out there, but also have a mental health impact because people, again, like to look at those natural shapes, and it can actually improve their well-being. So again, natural lighting is a very simple idea to do this, and so coming up with strategies to move natural lighting through multifamily units or for housing is very important, and doing it in a way that doesn't end up putting too much glazing around the house and overheating the house, or as we discussed in Module 2, or wasting energy, can be the challenge of natural lighting. And then getting into physical health and physical well-being. Believe it or not, it doesn't matter what challenge you have or people have. This affects people of all ages of life. I know in our 1928-year-old older built home, once we had a kid, it was very difficult to get around the house the way it was designed. And so, no matter, we argue no matter what challenges people are facing, whether disabilities or not, accessibility is an easy thing that can be built in, especially into a new construction project, but then also ideally should be renovated into an existing home when you're considering the health impacts of the home. And so some of the terms out there are American with Disability Act, ADA, which primarily affects, is the bare minimum you have to do on multifamily housing and commercial until there's terms called beyond ADA. Aging in place is designing a space for people to age in that space and not have to have it renovated or retrofitted. Universal design is another topic you might hear about. Zero-step and zero-step certification is a guidance program that can help give you the ideas on how to do all this and check it off and get it certified. And then assistive technology is growing things that can help people with technology, like keyless locks, get around a space or get into a space. And so we believe this is important. We believe this is a huge growing aspect that should be integrated right into green building, and is a big piece of health, and certainly, certainly should not be ignored. And so we have some sessions and education on that, and we're putting out even more education on that as this grows. And again, you can find lots of resources out there, both from the Home Builders Association and the National Association of the Remodeling Industry. Both have credentials out there and training out there with some very specifics on how to, how to implement these in smaller projects as well. Another growing concern, and this follows along with people who are have MSC issues, multiple chemical sensitivity. This is the same kind of concept. People suffering from ailments simply by just being too close to magnetic frequencies, radio frequencies, Wi-Fi frequencies, electromagnetic frequencies. And so there aren't too many conclusive evidence that this actually exists, but there, if you look at the some materials coming out of Europe using the precautionary principle, we've put together a list of resources and put out some education on ways that you can simply design or redesign a home that, should these actually be an issue, that can help lessen the impact of that. And so, simple ideas like keeping a refrigerator 6 feet away from a sleeping area, or halogenated lighting away from a sleeping area, or keeping the power off, having a switch to break the power off in a room. Again, a lot of this has to do with sleeping, and the idea is that some of these signals can actually impact sleeping, especially of children, and that can reduce cognitive functions. It can lead to sleeping issues. It could even lead to potential carcinogenic issues or aid in them. And so, again, just simple things that can be done to avoid our overexposure to these technologies, might be worth considering for our own health. And so we have a 4-part series on this listed online. Again, you can go through that and learn some of the reasons on why this is important, and then ways to mitigate these issues with your clients. So just looking at some of the data out there, this is AIA puts out a report every quarter, I believe, on what's important. And so when looking at energy efficiency and home automation popular choices, one thing we wanted to point out is the growing concern of air quality and putting in air purification systems. Looks like clients are starting to get more interested in that. And then if we look at this house report, they seem to be putting out a what homeowners want report every year. The two we highlighted here directly deal with health. The first one on the top, which seems to be nearly important, besides look and feel, obviously, is functionality. And we would almost argue to some degree functionality plays a role with accessibility, because that accessibility does play a role in functioning around the house and how to get around. And then on the bottom there, which is still a growing concern, is preventing and addressing health issues, primarily looking at air quality impacts on the home. And then here again on the AIA, just right under energy extra insulation, which just shows that that's an energy efficiency piece, is a massive growing trend. You can see of all these items here are accessibility related, and so again, very important for design features. All right, so in our next session, we're going to be, in our next module, module 4, we're going to be covering materials. Hopefully you'll be joining us. Thank you.